Hello, welcome to Digital Exposure TV. Today I'm going to show you how to create cinematics in Unreal Engine. This is for a buddy of mine who's a really great animator and loves animation, but he wants to move over from Blender to Unreal. And I'm pretty sure that most of the things, if not all of the things I'm going to show you, are completely applicable to Unreal Engine 5. It's just I know how to do it pretty well in UE4, and it's going to take me some time to learn where all the new toys are in UE5 to show you in that. So if anyone tries this in UE5, can you leave it in the comments just so people know whether it works or not, or if there's anything you need to do to get it to work in UE5. That would be really helpful. So today we're going to make this. And I'm just going to take you through it at my pace, and hopefully you can follow along. I'm not going to be super tutorialized about this. I'm just going to try and go step by step to help you so that you can go step by step and create your own cinematics for your own game or for your own film. So it's not a complicated process. It's pretty simple really when you break it down. It just takes time because there's lots of aspects to go through, like point by point. So the first thing you want to do is essentially create your scene. Now, I've just created something basic here. I took a free asset I had from the marketplace. It's called Modular Building Set. And I opened up the demo level. I added a few bits and pieces to it so I could create this. My lighting is essentially this one big primary light here, which is supposed to represent like moonlight, and it spreads across the scene. But then I've got a little bit of a fill light over here for my character, and I put that as a stationary light so that it can be changed because you don't want to keep baking your lighting all the time. So the character I just grabbed off Mixamo completely for free, grabbed some animations, and I made a custom animation of my own just of him looking around. I essentially made him kneel during an idle and then added some bits in. So it's nothing kind of crazy. But what you'll need to do this is essentially an environment, anything really. It doesn't have to be like this. Just your own little environment or one you've already got for a game you're working on or a film you're working on. And you need a character and some animations. That's all you're really going to need. Everything else is superfluous and just making things more interesting looking. Like for example, I just added in this steam and I've added some rain effects in and stuff, which I'm going to add at the end. I've just turned them off in my scene. I'll turn them on just so you can have a look. So there, I just made everything look wet, and you can see there's some particle systems there where water will drip down in the background. But I'm going to turn that off for now. But you'll understand that this is why this fill light looks so bright, because once I turn the wetness on to the whole scene, which is just a wetness decal on the whole scene, you'll see it looks actually quite dark. So that's why I've done it that way. So you've got your scene, you've got your character, you've got your animations. What's next? Well, the thing is, the way this works is that you have a master sequence which you can change shots in. And in that master sequence, you can add your music or any sound effects that go across shots. That's essentially how it's going to work. So we're going to create shot one, and we're going to get our camera just the way we like it. And we're going to get our animation the way we like it. And then once we've done that, we can duplicate shot one to create shot two and shot three, which we're going to do today. And obviously you can add as many shots as you like. So let's add our camera animations in and our animations. So first thing we need to do is create shot one, and that's in the form of a level sequence. So you go to cinematics here and go to level sequence. The master sequence is what the level sequences are going to go inside, and the level sequences are our shots. So let's add our sequence. Well, I've added this little file called tutorial. We're just going to call it shot one. Sorry, I have to reach around things to type. So that's shot one. And that will be in our tutorial. There you go, shot one. So I'll save that. If you want to save a little thumbnail of this, by the way, you just click the little save button here in your sequencer, and it will save a thumbnail here where your shot 1 is. Whereas if you just go to File and Save All, which is what I do all the time, that will save the information in your sequence, but it won't save the little screenshot. So that's just a little tip for you. So the things we're going to need in this sequence to begin with are a camera and our character. So if we click on our character and we go into the world outliner, just drag him in. Mine's called Crouch to Stand because I never changed his name when I imported him with the animation. So that's kind of silly, but it is what it is. So there's your character. And with anything you drag into the sequencer, you can access attributes of it if they are accessible. So pretty much anything that's in this right-hand column. But we're not going to go deep into that. We're just going to use what we need. So, for example, we've got the location, rotation, and scale. So we could add a keyframe to move him around. We're not going to do that just yet. We're just going to leave him there. And this character that I've dragged in is the skeletal mesh. So I'll just show you. If you go to the content browser, I've gone to my tutorial, gone to my character, and then the skeletal mesh is the one with this little pinky purple line on the bottom. And you just drag him in. That's all you need to do. And then just put him in the orientation you want him in. So back into our sequencer, which is our shot 1. We just need him in there so we can add the animations and everything later. But what we also want to do is add a camera. Now, for my shot, he's not going to be in this pose, so his head isn't going to be in the same place. So I'm going to add my animation in first. And the animation I want to start with is Crouch Looking, which is an animation I created for this. As you can see, the animation runs longer than the timeline. So this little section here is your end point. You want to drag that out as long as you can, and you can see that the little thing is getting shorter there. You can zoom out by dragging it. And this is your end point, the red. So let's keep dragging it out. Drag, 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 drag. And we want to try and get to the end animation so that we have something to work with, because I don't want to use the entire animation, just part of it. So if I go over here and look at him in his little animated state, and if I press spacebar, it'll start playing the animation. Oh, sorry, I need to be clicked in here. Press spacebar, it'll play the animation. Now, granted, it's not an amazing animation, but it'll work for what I need it for. Now, I don't really want him to look left. I want him to look to his right, which is there. Yeah, that's kind of the shot I want. So I'm going to start the animation, start the sequence even, from around here. So I'll drag that green line, which is the start, to there. Just gives me what I want to work with. So it's probably going to change into something I don't want. Yeah, around there. So let's put my start and end point there. This is the part of the animation I want for my shot 1. Now, I'm going to add the animations in for the other shots, but I'm going to do them in shot 2 and 3 because shot 1 is just a close-up on his face, so we don't really need to do that yet. So now we've got our animation, we need our camera to focus on that animation. So let's drag our camera in, and you can see here in this section here where you can pick all of your basics. We're just going to type in CIN for cinematic, and we're going to use a cinematic camera. It's important you use this type of camera and not the other type of camera. So I've dragged my camera in. You can see there's a little preview there of what it's seeing, but that doesn't really matter right now. And you can rotate it by using this here, click, and you can rotate, and you'll see that you can see him there. But I like to use my motion to move the camera and use the rotation by changing the z-axis of the rotation here in the right-hand details panel, because it just gives you a fluidity that you wouldn't otherwise get because you have to keep changing modes as you're moving around. So I like to use that for move and then this for rotate. See? But there's a better way to control your camera. So once you've clicked on your camera, and this can get complicated, so I may get a little bit tied up with this, but let's just go step by step. On a Mac, you can press Command-Shift-P to go into pilot mode. There is another hotkey for Windows, so I suggest you look up the Windows hotkey if you're using Windows. So I'm going to use Command-Shift-P, and then I'm in pilot mode. and you'll see, say, pilot active. And there's a little eject button there for when you want to cancel pilot mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera around, and you can see where this is, where the little X, Y, and Z axis is. That's where it used to be. But you're currently looking through the camera and piloting it. And I want it to be kind of around here. So then I'm going to press eject. And now you can see my camera is there. But you can also see it's very zoomed in. And that's because we're not seeing what the camera is truly seeing. So what we want to do is grab our camera over here in the world outliner, drag it into the sequencer. So let's just minimize our little animation there and go straight into the cameras. So this set here at the top, that is to do with when we use the master sequencer. So that's going to be where we're cutting our shots. So when you click that, the little icon there, that will mean that it is transmitting to the master sequence. We don't need that yet. What we need is to see through the camera. So if you look at our camera here, which is labeled Cine Camera Active 42, we use that little camera. Now we're seeing through the camera, and you'll see that we're actually seeing through pilot active. So we're in pilot mode. That's perfect. So we've got to set our settings for the camera before we do anything. Let's just move it back. We're going to pilot it back so we can see everything. And if by, like in this situation, you can see that there's an icon on screen, a billboard, you can press G and that will disappear. But make sure you turn it back on so you can see what you're dealing with later, because the camera will disappear too. So we press G so that we've got rid of any distractions. We're in pilot mode, but we want to make sure that our camera is set to the right settings. And this is why we're going to duplicate our camera later, because we want to get the settings right now. So you want to go into your film back settings. Let's, yeah, these are the right settings. Okay, so for film back, I like to use custom. You can use any 16:9 because most screens are 16:9 aspect ratio. I like to do a custom one, and this is cinematic widescreen. So you're going to set it to 24mm for the sensor width and 10mm for the sensor height. And you see how that's like in cinematic widescreen. If I pull this down, you can see the black bars. So you don't have to use that. That's just something you might want to use if you're making a film. And I particularly like it. So I'm going to use that film back. Once we've set the film back, we can just minimize that. You don't really need that anymore once it's set. Then what we want to do is we want to set our focal settings. So focal length in millimeters. Let's change that. Let's try 50 millimeters. Okay. So 50 millimeters is a general sort of like portrait lens. You see it's all kind of blurry because it's out of focus. We'll sort that out in a second. 50 millimeters is your general portrait lens. So if you're shooting anybody sort of like from the hip to the head or closer, a lot of the times you'll use 50 millimeters. You can use 35 millimeters. That's also a really good portrait lens. Let's set that. Didn't seem to make a whole lot of difference, probably because the max is set there. So say if we go max 50 or max 35, there you go. So there you go. You got your 35. So let's set it to 50. I guess your max should always be the same as your minimum if you want to get it right. I don't know. You can play around with it. It's not important. As long as you get the focal length that you want, that's the important part. And you also want the depth of field that you want and the focus. So let's frame up the shot first before we set the focus. We're still in pilot mode, so I can move the camera around the way I like it. Sorry if it's a little bit snappy for you. And I like this shot here. So I'm going to then set the focus. Now see this manual focus distance? You can move that left and right. The further left you move it, the closer the focus will pull towards you. So towards the camera, see? If I push it away, it's focusing on things in the distance. So I go really far, you can only see the distance. So you could do that, Or you can use this eyedropper tool, which is quite helpful, but not 100% accurate. So if I go between his eyes, it'll focus exactly here as the main focal point, and that's what we want. That's great. Then we need to set our f-stops to see how blurry the background will be. This is a little bit too blurry. It's not natural. A normal camera wouldn't be that blurry, especially if you're shooting at night. So let's try f4. So if you don't know how camera lenses work and f-stops, essentially the way cameras and sensors work is a light goes through the lens onto the sensor, and f-stops are what control how much light goes through the lens. It's essentially an aperture. If you've ever seen like a camera go and the aperture opens and closes, that's what it is. It's a constant aperture. So your f4 is going to be like wide, so it lets more light in. And like say f22 is really high, so it's very tight, it's closed aperture, it doesn't let much light in, and you usually get that on very sunny days. So in the dark you usually have a very wide aperture so that lots of light can get in, but that creates a really shallow depth of field, which is what that blurriness is. It's called bokeh. So this blurriness in the background is bokeh, and that is caused by the shallow depth of field. So if we move the focus, let's move it, there you go. So you see how his shoulder is in focus and his face is blurry, that's in the foreground, and the background is blurry. That is your depth of field. So we'll move the depth of field closer and closer to his face. There you go. Now his face is in focus, but the background is blurry. So that is the amount of blur is controlled by the f-stops. So let's refocus his face. Let's put it right there. Oh, I don't like that. It's a bit too shallow as well. So let's put it around there. Okay, let's go with 4. Okay, 4 was good. So then you got the right amount of blur in the background. It probably could be less blurry, but just for the sake of this, we will go with that. So I want this to be my starting position. So if we exit pilot mode, and by the way, you can keep these settings, just make sure that we're going to be changing the focus, the focal distance. So, you know, as the camera moves around, you need to compensate for that. Otherwise, it'll go out of focus. I do think it is still a little bit too blurry in the background. Let's just try f6. There you go. f6 is better. Maybe f7 again. No, f7's a bit too much. I don't know why that looks so... That isn't right. I think that's actually a little glitch on... There you go. That's how it should look with f6. So let's save everything. And we want to save the position of the camera. So we're in pilot mode. Let me just press exit from the pilot mode. And I'll just move this around. Oh, yep. We got to press G so we can see everything again. And there you go. There's your camera. We don't want to move that because it's just in the place where we want it. So we've got our camera highlighted here in our sequence. And there's a transform here. And under transform, you got your location, your rotation, and your scale of the camera. Now you could just separately put this as location and rotation to make sure it's where you want it to be. But I just usually close the transform and add a keyframe to everything because I'm not doing anything specific right now that requires me to do specific movements. I just set it for everything and then it will keep it exactly where it is. So then as time goes by, actually I'm going to set that start point before it starts. So just at the very beginning, that's good. And then as the animation plays, you'll see he'll dip out of focus maybe. But also we want to move the camera. So by the end of the animation, let's go just past the end so that it gives us some wiggle room. I want the camera to have moved. So let's go back into pilot mode. I'm just going to do it by pressing on the little camera there because pilot mode's active. There we go. And I'm going to pilot this around. And do I want it to go more to the side? Yeah, that's cool, right? Let's have it there as our end point. But we've also got to go into the focal distance. Now, I actually forgot, and this is a good lesson. I forgot to save the focal distance when it was over here on the left. So let's save the camera motion first. There. I've added a transform to the camera, so it will go from there to there. But the focal distance is still set to how it was at the very beginning here. So let's save that. Let's add a keyframe. So manual focal distance, yes, add a keyframe. We don't need to change the aperture or the focal length right now because they're fine for the whole shot. So then when we get over to here, now you'll find that it's not in the same focus. So if we go to our little eyedropper tool, drop it on his forehead again. I swear that thing doesn't work very well. Let's do it. There you go. So that should be the correct focus. And we're going to save that because we're at the point in the timeline where we've saved the camera position. We're going to go to manual focus and we're going to save that again. You'll see another, let's zoom in a little bit. You'll see another little keyframe there. So we've got a keyframe for the focus and the camera position on both ends, the beginning and the end. So as it moves around, it stays in focus and watches his motion. Oh, that looks cool. Maybe we'll extend this out to about there. So we'll add the end point there. We'll extend the shot, which is this. And then we'll extend our we'll just move our camera position and focal point to the end there. Now, if it goes out of focus at some point in the middle, you can always check that by sort of going to the middle and then refocusing again on his forehead. Again, it didn't work very well. It's not brilliant. There you go. So it's good enough. So we'll just put a keyframe for the focus right there in the middle. So we make sure it doesn't go out of focus and it keeps track of the focus. So now when we play it, this is our shot. Now that's pretty cool. And it's going to look even cooler in the rain. Where does it end? There, just as he looks. It's kind of dramatic, right? So we can make this a little bit faster, a little bit slower, but we're going to leave it there. That's our shot one now. So let's save that. And again, we want to save the little screenshot so we know what shot it is. So we're going to press this little save button there. So when we go into a content browser, we go back and we got shot one, we can see our shot. So we've done our little shot. We've got the animation in there. That's everything we need for this one shot. We'll just close these things. So just to recap, this line is what's going to be used for our master sequence. Now this shot is this line is our camera. And then we open up, it's got our camera animation, and then it's got our manual focus. Then this is our character, and under our character has our animation. We don't need to transform because he's standing still, but this is our animation, and I will show you how to blend some animations and stuff in the next shot, but we only need this for this shot. So we can close that now, but we're still in pilot mode. So we need to press exit on the pilot mode, and the camera went back to its kind of default position before we had actually started that sequence. And this is the little representation for that sequence, which is shot one. So now we need to create another camera for our next shot, which is why we set all of the settings on this camera with the film back and everything early. So now we're going to duplicate that. So edit, duplicate. Now we have a second camera. Perfect, because that's going to be the camera for our shot two. So with this, now we can pilot it to where we want it to be for our second shot. And my second shot is going to be from behind, sort of quite high up. So I'm going to go into pilot mode. For me, it's Shift Command P. And now we see what the camera sees, and I can pilot it around. I'm not sure what lens I want to use, but I know I want a shot that's kind of like this. How close am I to that building? Kind of close. I want a shot where I can see that road maybe. Ooh, that'd make a good shot where it goes behind there, wouldn't it? That'd be kind of cool. But I think we're kind of zoomed in a bit too far. So let's put it on 40 millimeters. Oh, you got to put the max, not the minimum. Again with that. Okay, so Maybe 35 might be better. There you go, 35 millimeter. Usually when you're doing a wide shot, you do like a 24 or 18 or something. But because I want it to look kind of zoomed in and get that shallower depth of field, this is what I am going with. So I'm now piloting the camera. And yeah, it'd be really cool to sort of go like this and around. So it would be nice if I could get something behind it. No, that's not gonna fly, is it? No pun intended with his arms out like that. Okay, so for now we'll go with, oh, which roof is in the way? Sorry. There you go. That's kind of what we want. We want to go from there to there. So we'll put this as our starting position just so we have somewhere to start from. So if I exit pilot mode in a second, first thing I want to do is make sure that my depth of field and everything is the way I want it. So let's manual focus on him. Let's, sorry, go back to our camera, this one that we're in now. And I just want to get the focus right there. It's difficult sometimes. Okay, so let's get a really, really shallow depth of field so we can see where the depth of field is. So 0.01 and on the max 0.01. So there you go. Let's give you a really shallow depth of field, and now we can just pull the focus to exactly where we want it to be by moving it left and right, holding in this box where it says manual focus distance. That's how I want it, but I don't want it that blurry, obviously. So let's put this at F5. See how that looks. No. Gotta do it on the minimum. Damn that minimum. Okay, maybe 4. I feel like these should just be tied together. It's very confusing. Okay, let's just try 1 on either and see how that looks. Well, I guess it'll do. It's slightly out of focus, which makes sense. In real life, that would be how it would be. So that's our shot now. We're going to exit pilot mode. And we're just going to look around at our camera. We don't want to move our camera or change any settings right now. So we're going to create shot 2. So we'll go into cinematics, add level sequence. This is going to be our shot 2. Add it to our tutorial. There our shot 1 is shot _2. Okay, so there's our shot 2, and you can see the little icon there. But now we need our camera, which is over here. That's the first thing we want to do. We don't want to lose our camera. So we're going to grab our camera, put that in there. And at the beginning of the shot, we're just going to add our transform, and we're going to add our manual focus by adding keyframes. And then we know we're not going to lose that now, right? So let's see if I can come up with a new starting position. Let's press G so we can get rid of all the stuff in the scene that we don't want to see, like the camera. So we're going to go to G, and then we're going to go in our pilot mode. We're going to move the camera around. So I kind of want my starting position to be somewhere around here so that you can see that cool looking, I don't know, billboard, if you want to call it a billboard. Okay. So now I'm going to update my transformation for the camera by clicking on the keyframe and then clicking transform. Then I'm going to click on the keyframe for the manual focus and press transform. So that's our starting position. Awesome. Now we play this. It's kind of short. We want it to be a longer, more dramatic shot. So let's drag this out. Boom, 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 boom. Then we're going to drag this out so that we can see the scope of our shot. Drag the end point out, drag how much, this is for your master sequence. So this is how much your master sequence will see. So if you cut that off, that's all you'll see up to in your master sequence. So you've got to make it the full length. Okay, so we press play by pressing the space bar. I kind of want my shot to maybe be about this long, but we also forgot to set it to 24 frames per second. So the shot will be a different speed. So, okay, we want the shot to be about that long, I think. So let's put the end point there. And then let's continue to pilot our camera. I just move stuff around so that I know I'm piloting it. And we're going to move it across here. And I think I'll move it up. And I want to obscure him there. Okay. This may not look like a good shot. I don't know. We'll find out. And I think the focus distance is pretty spot on already. So we'll keep that the way it is. And let's just watch this shot. Ooh, that seems a little bit too fast, huh? Okay, so because it's too fast, but we want the same shot, we'll change the ending. The end point will be there. And then we'll drag our camera animation out to the end as well. We'll put it a little bit past the end so we've got some wiggle room so it doesn't slow down too much at the end. There we go. That's better. Okay, so let's play it from the beginning. Yes, that's way more dramatic, way cool. Okay, so what I really want is this foreground element to be really out of focus. But I also know that that means the background's going to be really out of focus too. So let's put 0.03 and 0.03 so it matches. There we go. It's too out of focus. So let's try 0.2. There we go. Now that's all in focus, but this foreground element is quite blurry. So we got the depth of field just right. So let's save that. And we're going to keep that. It's not going to change over the shot. So we don't need to add any keyframes. But if you wanted to change that over the shot, or if you wanted to zoom in, like you could change the millimeters on the focal length here and then press a keyframe so that it could zoom in over time. Okay, so we have our shot now. This is what we wanted. Looks very cool, but we need our animation to go in the shot. And we're going to use the same animation for this shot and the next shot. That's why we want to duplicate this shot when we're done, or at least duplicate the animations in the shot. So we're going to exit pilot mode, and we know this is the beginning and the end of our shot. And what I want him to do is run off here and jump. So I'm going to take my guy and add him to our sequence. So Mr. Crouch to stand again. There he is. And now I'm going to add the animations. So I think he's going to be running and then he's going to be jumping. And remember, this is a film, so it's going to cut from his shot looking down to a wide shot of him running. So, you know, it's time passes, right? It's implied by the cuts. I mean, you can do it however you want to do it. That's just how I make films. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a transform into him later. First, we want to just kind of place him where we want him to be at the beginning, which is about here. His feet aren't actually planted to the ground very well there, to be honest. So let's place him there. Actually, I've just realized something. I don't know if I actually set him in place before. So let's do that first. So let's save all of this. And then we're going to go back into our shot one. We're going to look from the camera of shot one. Yep, okay. And then we're going to exit pilot mode. Now, did I save his position? No, I didn't. So this is really important. So otherwise, if I don't save his position for this shot, he is going to move in the next shot. So let's pop him there and add a transform at the beginning. So he stays there before the beginning. So he will be in this position for the whole shot, his anchor point. Now, if I hadn't have done that, when I moved him over there in the next shot, this shot would have reverted to him being over there. So let's make sure he's still in the shot. Yep, he's still fine. I just dropped him down ever so slightly, but he's in the right position. So that's great. So we'll turn that off for now. We'll come back in here later. I will save this. I don't want to use the little icon because then it's going to change my thumbnail. And we'll go back into shot 2. So in shot 2, now that I have corrected that mistake, we can have him where we want him and set him wherever we like. I'm not going to set him anywhere just yet, simply because, oh, I guess the ground is lower over here. Simply because I've got to add the animation in and I don't know where he's going to start or end. So we've got our camera. That's all locked in. We don't need to bother with that right now. Now we're going to go to our animations. So he's going to run. So I'm going to find the run animation, fast run. There you go. And this fast run is on the spot. So you can have different animations, and this is a particular one where it's just in one spot. And that's what I wanted. So you can drag out this animation. So if it's a repeating, looping animation, you can drag it out like this, and it will just continue on and on and on. So we'll let it continue for as long as we need it for this scene. So let's start him off around here, but we're going to start the animation like before our camera starts working. So he kind of moves off in a natural way. So the camera will start working after he started running. In real life, that's what would happen. You would catch someone on camera after they've started to run. So that makes perfect sense. So here he is starting to run. So we're going to set his position by pressing transform. So that's his location, rotation, and scale locked in. If you look closely, you'll see that there is a keyframe for each one of those. So then he's locked in that position when he starts. Now, you could have the type of animation where he just runs forward and his motion will move forward. But because he's on the spot, we need to actually animate this. And I wanted to show you this because I've had to do this a lot of times and you might have to do this too. So in the time it takes him to run, boom, 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 3-4 steps. How far is he going to go? You're going to have to guess. So I'm going to guess that from there to there, he's probably about here by now. And I would say that this is where the minutia of the transform comes in. So I'm going to do a general transform where he's here at this point. Boom, rotation, location, and scale. However, he's gone up a step, hasn't he? So when he's at this point here, that's when I'm going to drop him down on location only. So I'm not going to do it yet because I want to get the runtime correct. So let's see. Yeah, he's a little bit behind. He should be further than he is already. So let's move this point to a little bit earlier. And let's see where he is now. There you go. That makes more sense. Let's end the animation just there, just so you can see where it ends. There. That makes sense. He goes from there to there in the right amount of time. And it looks like he's kind of floating there because we haven't moved him off into a further direction yet. So, like I said, when his feet are down here, he needs to be lower at some point. So let's just... Oh, I did not know that was controlling the camera. So let's go frame by frame. So that is when his foot should be up there. But his foot is low here, high here, sorry. So we need to just drop him down there in his location on the Z axis. Boom. So by the time he gets to there, he's higher up. So he's not floating. He's like on the ground, boom. And here you can even see he's gone through the floor. So we can lift him up higher. And then we can add a Z location. So his feet will go boom, boom, and he's in the correct place. Now, obviously, his feet slip from here on in because we haven't done the next animation, but his location is correct. So that's perfect. That's great. You won't see it very well now, but you will when we've added the more animations in. Okay, so now it's time to add more animations in, and this is where it kind of gets fun. So we've got this looping animation here, right? But we need to transition into another animation. So go to the end of the animation, and we can add another animation in. That's just the wait. Sorry, go to animation, and I've got one where he does like a flip. Front flip, there you go. So this front flip, you can see he like lifts off and then he bounces, right? Now I want just the bounce from the run. So I'm going to cut that off there, the beginning where he does that lift off. I just want that jump. So the jump is the start, okay? And then he lands on the floor. You see that? He lands on like an invisible floor. We don't want that. What we do want is to cut that bit off. So we want the jump. So far, all we've got is run, 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 run. So as he gets to about there, we're going to cut this off, the running. So if we come here, you can see, let's just drag this animation over a bit more and zoom in. So he goes, just move the camera, he run, and then nothing. Okay? But his position changes because obviously we've set it to him moving. That's okay because we're going to blend the animations together. So around here, I think, I'm going to start blending the jump in. And let's see what happens. Whoa, he lifted off and went way too far. And I'll tell you why that happened. Because his position relative to where his other position is off because of that first jump. So in his first jump, he starts where we are. Then he does that, right? So it would make sense for us to mix the animation at the very beginning when he just starts running. Yeah, see, there's way too much jump.
One eternity later.
He's running, he's jumping. The jump is kind of fast and intense, a little bit too much. So let's make the jump slower. So if we go into the front flip, let's open that up. Obviously, I've added my little fix in there. And this is good practice for you just to see like the kind of things that will come up when you're doing animation in Unreal. So I've sort of reset where his center is, right? But what I also want to do is maybe make his jump. So his hips are his sort of center, his root, if you want to call it that. So I am going to bring his root down. So all I'm going to do, and this is great practice as well, is just to learn how to adjust animations. So you can grab that, bring it down, bring it back, add a keyframe. Let's watch it back and see what it looks like. There you go. So now he's jumping a little lower. So we'll apply that. And then we're also going to go to the asset details and I'm going to change the speed to like 0.7 maybe and see how it looks in a slower. There you go. That's kind of what we want. So now if I save that and we go back to our sequencer, that's a bit better. It's a bit more what we want, right? So you can see how the animation blends. It's a very short blend, but it is there. So let's try and blend it a slightly different place. This is another thing you need to play with, is how long do you blend it for? When does it start blending? See, that kind of just jumps straight out. And I think we need a little bit more of that animation. There you go. A little bit better. Let's have a look at it through the camera. So that animation should kind of start later on. So let's move all of our animations. Oh, let's move our animations and also our points. So the camera, yeah, so probably I would think about here. So the camera will go like that. So let's say the shot starts around here. And he jumps, and then it will cut to the next shot. Let's see what the rest of that flip looks like. Probably stupid and crazy, but we can but look. Yeah, so let's zoom in. Oh, everything's still highlighted, that's why. So we don't get the end. There's the end of the flip, but I suspect it's going to look weird. Yeah, it slows down.
One eternity later.
What I wanted to do was do the same animation in the next shot and blend them together with that T-pose I was telling you about. But just because of the nature of how difficult these animations are, that's not going to work well for us. So we'll probably just want to go straight into the T-pose for the next shot. So we don't need to copy and paste this scene anymore, just the camera. And we might even use the camera from the first shot. But we have got that, so let's have a look through there. Let's use that as our little thumbnail. So save that. Then we can exit the camera. We can close this. And then we have 2 shots. So shot 1 and shot 2 of 3 shots. So we're going to need a shot 3, which I want to be sort of down here looking up at him, and I want explosions because I want to show you how you can basically turn on particle effects with sounds while you are doing your shots. So a great thing about doing something in Unreal in terms of animation is you can put sounds in that are louder the closer you get, which is attenuation. And you can add that into your sequence. So the camera goes past the sounds or far away from the sounds as they're happening. So I think that's a really great aspect that we can add into it. So let's start the third shot. First thing we need to do is get another camera. So let's press G so we can see everything. And I would probably just grab the camera that we used from shot 1 and duplicate that. So edit, duplicate. Now we've got another camera, and let's set our camera up roughly where we want it. So let's go back into pilot mode and let's move around. So I do kind of want like a zoomed in look. This is the shot I want. Let's press G so we can't see all the other stuff. I do want it moving as well, this shot. So maybe even zooming out, and then we can show you how it zooms out. So let's, first of all, we're kind of zoomed in a bit too much. But then again, if we're zooming out, this might be just good enough. So I'm not sure what angle I want to get this from. Something a little bit lower. I do kind of want to see the top there. Sorry about this. Just bear with me. Yeah, I'll come in closer, but I want to be at a higher angle like this. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of my angle I want. So let's now start a new sequence. So we'll go to add a level sequence. We'll go back to tutorial. We'll call it shot 3. And after shot 3, we'll add it all to the master sequence, add music and stuff, and then you can see how it all comes together and use those skills to make your own animations. So there we go, shot 3. So let's add the camera in. So let's exit pilot mode. Where's my camera right now? Can't find it. You never know where you are when you're in pilot mode. So if we just go to camera on here, we'll just find it. It's probably this one. Yep, it's that one. Okay, so we'll drag that in. We're going to set our transform so we have our position and we don't lose it. Let's set our focal distance to there using the eyedropper tool. I think it could be a little less blurry in the background. Let's go with 7 and 7 on there. There we go. That should be good. I think that's good. So save, always save. Actually, let's press save on here and then we get the little thumbnail as well. So when we go to a content browser, we know it's that shot. Okay, so now we've got our shot. we are going to, and we've got our camera settings, we need to set our camera settings. So there we go, because the focal distance and everything is going to change. So current focal length 50 millimeters. Okay, aperture won't change, but that will. So now we're going to run this, see how long it is. It's not going to be a long shot, but we might change the camera a lot after we've had the animation. So if you remember, let's go back to the beginning. He, at this point, is actually more like out here. So let's exit our camera view, but at least we've got something to start with. He is more sort of around here at this point, okay? And I'm just doing this roughly, just for illustration purposes. And he is also going to be, rotating downwards because he's already started to fall. So after he's done his little rotation, I would normally blend the animation together so that he rotates and then falls. But because of the problem with that animation, I'm not going to bother. This is just for illustration. So let's add a transform for him. So let's add him into the sequence. There you are, buddy. Let's add you in underneath the camera. We'll close the camera for now. And we're going to add his transform. So he starts in this position. Now we're going to add his animation, and it's going to be this sort of T-pose animation. Nope, that's the wrong animation. Animation is this one, T-pose. Oh, okay, there you go. So I kind of animated him so his feet were pointing down a bit. His arms are out, so he's falling, his head's up. And it looks like he knows what he's doing, hopefully. So let's zoom in on that and just drag that out so that animation just continues. And then we'll animate him to fall. So as he falls, his trajectory is going to change slightly. So we've got his transformation already. And then over time, let's set this to 24 frames per second. I almost forgot again. Sorry about that. Always make sure that all of your sequences, your shots are in the same frame rate. And if you're making a game, try and make it the same frame rate as the game plays in. So about here, I think he should have fallen quite far. So let's practice this. Let's give him an end point. Let's say his end point is here. He's still moving outwards a bit from the momentum from before. And maybe he's even fallen further by then. So he's fallen out about there. And I would say he's probably rotated slightly as well to face more down. So let's add that position in there. There we go. So now we can watch him fall in real time. Oh, still clicked on the scene. Sorry about that. Still clicked on the scene. Need to make sure we clicked on the sequence. There you go. So he falls very slowly, right? Obviously we don't want that unless you're doing slow motion. That's a whole other thing. And let's see how fast he falls now. Oh, again, clicked on the animation. Need to click on the sequence. There you go. So that is slow, but again, this is a film and we want it to be dramatic. So let's not make it too fast. There we go. So that'll look cool from the perspective of the camera, which is here. There you go. It looks more realistic speed, right? So the camera is not capturing this very well. He's just whizzing past the camera, boom, gone. So let's find a good starting position that really shows off where he is. We're in pilot mode already, so we don't need to worry about that. Let's pick a starting position. I kind of like it being from there, but then we're going to want to move. So that's our beginning start position. Oh, nope. Sorry, my fault. I should have been clicked on the camera. There we go. So the camera didn't actually move. Now it will. So that's going to be the beginning start position for the camera. And we'll set that in the transform. And then as time goes by and he flies by, maybe we'll pull down to see where he goes. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, you have to kind of set a thing just to keep it. So let's keep it there for now, just so we have a position that we can move from. So, wow, he really goes fast, doesn't he? So let's exit there and see when he stops. He is going to stop. I don't know if you can see that on the left. Around there. So we kind of want our shot to end not long after that. So he's whizzed past the camera and then the shot kind of ends about there, which means the camera movement needs to end about here. Okay. So the final camera movement, if we go into pilot cam, probably he's going to whiz past the camera and you want to sort of see it from that angle, I think. So let's set that for the camera, but I also want to zoom out on the camera. So if I press this, it should, in theory, zoom out. If I can set that, will it zoom in or zoom out? So 50, there you go, 50 to 35, I think. Yeah, so you can see that, set to 50 there, and it zooms out to 35 by about there. So we don't want the camera to just dead stop, but we do want it to go past. So with the camera, by the time it gets to about here, I want the camera to have continued to move, but at a slower rate.
1 eternity later.
Move the whole shot like that. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so if we look at our shot now, this is how it looks. But what I wanted to do was add some explosions in to make this just more interesting. So I thought I'd teach you how to use sounds and particles. So let's add sounds and particles into this shot. So first things first though, our shot has changed. So we need to get the focal distance from the beginning of the shot, which is him there, and set that. And then we need to click on one for this area here. So let's set the focus on his feet there. And we will set that again, just to make sure he's in focus the entire time. There you go. That looks better. Okay, now we're talking. So let's save that. And let's add some explosions. So let's eject from the pilot mode. And you can see that as time goes by in the right hand side, he's falling past these windows. So let's add an explosion to this window here, which is third one down to his left. Because that looks cool, no? And I've got some explosions here from Realistic Starter Visual Effects Pack Volume 2. Bit of a mouthful. So let's use an explosion. Explosion. Big explosion B there. And we just drag and drop it. And you can see a little explosion. And I'll rotate it so that it faces the way we want to out of the window. Okay? Now that is going to happen automatically. So see where it says auto activate? You got to turn that off. Always turn off your particles before you use them in a sequence. So next we need to see what else is going to be in the frame. So that's going to be in the frame there. And then the one to the bottom right of it here is also going to be in the frame. So let's move this one further up. Let's move it up to there. And then when it comes down to here, we'll have an explosion there, which is 1 to the right and 2, 3 down. Okay. So let's do that. So let's have a different explosion. Explosion C this time. 1 to the right, and 3 down. So explosion C. There. I don't like that one actually. Let's try explosion A. That one has too much smoke. It looks weird. Let's just delete that and put explosion A in the same window. There we go. That's better. Let's rotate it to face the camera. There we go. You can see that there's this green arrow, so you can rotate it. But again, we need to turn auto activate off so it doesn't just happen at the beginning when we press play and then never happen again. Let's save everything. And now when we go into a sequence, we can set the explosions at the right time. So if we look through the camera and see when he goes past, we want to maybe explode this one as he's passing around there. So we click on that, the particle system, and we drag it into the scene. And then we add a track, and we're going to add visual effects system toggle. So if you set it to deactivate before you start, add a keyframe, and then set it to activate when you want it to explode. So around here, there. So now when you watch it back, it explodes at the right moment. Although, I would say it's not very accurate because it doesn't happen all the time, which I would really like it to. So let's try adding it. I think it's just because we're playing it like that. It should work in the final thing just perfectly. Let's give it a try now. There you go. Yeah. See, I think it will work. It's just a case of in development, it doesn't show you if you're moving it too fast. So let's add this other explosion there. And we're going to drag that one in. And then we're going to add a track and we're going to go effects system toggle. And then we're going to deactivate it by default. So we're going to set the default there, little keyframe, and then we want it to explode just before he goes past or around there because it takes time for it to explode. And then we click activate and that will add a keyframe in. And that should be all good. Now, I would say that we just right click on this timeline. Oh, it won't let me right click on the timeline, which is very odd. I don't know why. Oh, maybe because we're still in pilot mode. I don't know. Yeah, if you click on there, right click and go to properties and go to keep state. That means once it's exploded forever and it won't explode again. And you can do that with any animations and stuff. If, like, say you moved a door open, if you go to keep state, it will stay open in the game during your play state. So let's save all and let's watch this little shot back and see how it looks. There you go, 2 explosions. Perfect. So we've done all 3 shots. The next thing we need to do is put them into a master timeline and add some music. But before we do that, I've just realized there's one extra thing. We want to add some sound that's attenuated. So let's get an explosion sound. Actually, we can just do this straight in here. We can just add audio track. There we go. And what we want to do is we want to drag and drop the attenuated sound into the level. So I'm going to look for explosion sound. There you go, explosion. And that's a cue. It always has to be converted into a cue from a sound. And you see the attenuation? So the sound is strongest here, but then it echoes out to here. Now that's what we want to try and capture as the camera goes past. So again, you need to turn auto activate off so that we can activate them in the actual sequencer. So if I drag explosion into here, into shot 3, and I drag the other explosion into shot 3, add the audio of explosion. I guess this could be blank and you could have no sound attached to it if you wanted to. But this is just an easier way of doing it, really. Let's add audio explosion. And then you just drag it in the timeline to when you want it to happen, basically. So you want the explosion sound there. So boom. Then you want the second explosion sound to be when that triggers, which is there. So in theory, you should get those sounds when it happens. Boom, boom. We won't find that out until the end. So let's save that. And let's exit Pilot and go into our tutorial. And then we will do our master sequence. So now we're going to do a master sequence. Go to cinematics, add master sequence. We are going to save it in the same place. I just want to make sure this is right. So we don't want to create any shots. Number of shots, 5. We're going to just create 0 shots, I think. So it doesn't create anything. So then master sequence is where it says sequence. Now it's created that file. Then you got your sequence master or master sequence. So within this master sequence, if it dares to open up, oh, yeah, it's already open. We can now add our shots. So we got shot 1, let's add that in. Then we can add shot 2. Then we can add shot 3. And let's zoom out. Let's make the timeline longer. Much, much longer. So we can fit all of those shots in. So then we can cut between shot 1 and shot 2. And shot 3, essentially. So if we press this now, we've got our shot 1. Oh, the FPS, the frame rate needs to be 24 FPS as well. So it matches. Let's save. So we've clicked our little icon, and now we've got our shot 1. So shot 1, of him watching over. Then it's going to cut to shot 2. Let's see it all in sequence. I don't like that. I'm going to change that. Boom, he jumps. Then you got your shot 3. You kind of have to watch it all the way from the beginning. I don't know why. I think I must have pressed something that does that. So you got your shot 2, then your shot 3. And then that is just where it ends. So it just cuts to your regular camera. Let's just switch off, press G, so you can see everything. Jumps, and then it ends. Let's add a track. So let's add audio, and I have some music somewhere. Music, The Awakening. That's just something that you can use on YouTube. And let's see how that sounds. Obviously, not great timing with the music. I think it should probably be like this. There you go. Okay, so we'll sort out the sound later. We got the music, we've got our shots together. That's how you cut your shots together. and then you can make yourself an animation. So let's polish this up. I'm going to polish up this jagged edges from the bokeh, and then I'm going to turn on the water and the rain and the thunder, and you can see what it looks like. Okay, so I managed to polish that up, and in the process I realized what we were doing wrong with the focal length. So another tip is once you're in your master sequence, you can click into your sequences to edit them. So if I click on shot 1, I'm in shot 1, which is brilliant. So you see how I haven't got that jagged stuff as much around the edge now? What I changed was in the aperture for the camera. See how it has like a minimum and maximum? I changed the minimum and maximum so that there was a range before there was no range. So that's how it worked. And if I want to go back to my master sequence, it's now sequence master, and it will take you back here. So what I want to do now, so let's turn this camera off. I want to go back into the scene, and I want to turn on my water stuff so that everything looks wet, right? My cameras and everything are still there. And I'm also, so now these should work. These are auto active. Yes, so that's the water should be dripping down in the background. So now you can see, if I press G again, you can see this whole scene looks better now. It's more interesting. And I'm using ultra dynamic sky and ultra dynamic weather. So if I switch the weather to thunderstorm, now we've got some atmosphere. So let's go back into our main sequence. This is how it's going to look. If I press play, there you go. And that's how it looks. I know it's not a lot. It's been a lengthy process, so that's because I'm trying to show you and I'm trying to remember a couple of things along the way. Pretty cool though, right? Okay, we're nearly there. There's a couple of things we need to do now. So now that we've got our master sequence, we need to add a camera cuts track. So if we go to add track and go to camera cut track, just add that on the top there. And what that does is that controls the flicking back and forth of the camera to the viewport. So if we go to shot 1, we make sure this little camera's on, and you see how it says camera cuts, because it's connecting to our master sequence camera cuts. So then we go into shot 2, our little camera's on again, and shot 3, our little camera is still on. So that means that when we turn this camera cuts on, it will go into the sequence and project that to the viewport. So there's a couple of other things I want to do before we round this off. And what we'll do at the end is I will show you how to trigger this sequence when you're playing a game. So say if your character walks into a room and it triggers this cutscene. And then I will also show you how you can render it out if you're making an animated movie. So before we do that, there's two things I want to do. One is I want to change the attenuation radius on those explosions, which are over here. So with these explosions, the attenuation is not going to reach the camera. So if I just press G so we can see them, and then if I press my camera cuts so that then we can go back into the sort of game world, and I move this around. If I just go over to these sound cues, there, you'll see the attenuation on the inner sphere and then the outer sphere. But if you look, our camera is actually over here. It's not inside that attenuation zone. So what we're going to do is we're going to just extend that out so that the camera, because when it cuts to these shots, where the physical camera is where it will hear the sound. So it needs to be in range. So all we need to do is, for this, we'll go into our content and I'll type in explosion, and we'll find the cue. So there's the explosion cue. Let me open that up. There you go. And we're just going to change the attenuation for this. So if we go to attenuation, sphere, there's the inner radius and the fall off distance. So I'm going to make that a separate window just so that you can see the difference when I change it. Normally I'd do this on a second screen, but obviously I'm recording on one screen, so you need to see what's going on. So our camera is here and our attenuation is here. So let's do the fall off distance way out into the camera zone, and the inner radius we'll put really close to the camera zone. That should be good enough, I think. Then we should be able to hear it when those explosions go off. So if we go back into our sequencer and we press our camera cuts so we can see what's there. Now when we play this, we should hear it. There you go. So you hear it. The sound cuts out because the shot cuts. So you can play around with this and get the sounds the way you want them. I'm just showing you the basics so that you've got the basic skills to do what you want to do. So because I'm also showing you how to do this for a game and a film, if this is a game, what's interesting is when this shot ends, shot 3, it will cut back to the game camera, so your player camera. So if you're in range of those explosions, you will hear them from the distance that your camera actor is, so your player. And this music will continue until the true out point. Now these in and out points I put before, they're actually not very good. They're not the specific correct ones. I don't know what I did there. That's my fault. I apologize. Just use the basic ones, the little green one on the left and the red one when you do it. I was just in editor mode and I think I pressed the wrong thing. But my point is, this sequence will play out until the end of the sequence. You can always dictate the end of the sequence with this left part here. So mine's going to go to basically the right side here. But what I thought was really cool is once the visuals have ended, you'll go back into your player camera. And what's also cool is you could get the music to continue to play. So visually, your shots will end here, and then you'll go into your camera, your player, and this music can continue and you can fade it out. So if we go to the audio here, and let's say we want to fade out just after this big crescendo. So we'll start the fade out around the middle, and we'll just click a keyframe there on the volume, and we'll click a keyframe on the end point of the volume to 0 there, and then it will fade out. So yep, that fades out. Okay, perfect. So then what we can also do is if I click on the track and I go to properties, I can go to keep state so that we know that once that music is faded out, it's faded out, and it will stay that way and it won't cause any problems. So then we'll save everything, and I will show you how you can trigger this sequence with your in-game player. So let's just turn off the camera cuts. Well, we don't need to turn off the camera cuts actually. Let's leave them as they are. We'll just close the sequencer. That's what I meant to say. Okay, so then if we pressed play, like let me just hover over to this area. So if I pressed play now in the viewport, I have a character. I can run around. But what we want to do is our character walks up to something and triggers this sequence, correct? So let's do that. Where do we want to trigger it? Well, here's something to keep in mind. Say if our character who's jumping, this guy, say if he is here, standing, we don't want our character to be here in front of the camera because he'll be in the background. So that's something to keep an eye on, be aware of. So also, your character, who is in your scene, in your cutscene, so this guy, for example, this is the last place I left him, but as soon as the scene kicks in, he'll go back to his starting position. So you can always hide this character. So what I would do in-game, if I'm making a game, I would just drag him and hide him there. So when you're playing the game and you're the character walking around, he's not just floating there, he's hidden, but he will appear for the cutscene. So let's say that our character is down here on the ground, and we're walking across this street. It's probably going to be very dark. Yeah, and our little cutscene is up there, somebody watching us. So we want to walk into this area and then trigger the cutscene. Very simple to do. So what we need to do is we need to find our scene, but our master scene. So here it's called sequence master. So we highlight that. Then we go to blueprints, open level blueprint. That's not even a word. And we will get a reference to that. So let's just create a reference to sequence master. Okay. Then let's go back into our scene and we're going to add a trigger. So let's trigger on the left side there. Let's do a box trigger. So whenever your character walks across this street, let's say, that triggers the cutscene. So let's change the size of this trigger so that you can't really avoid it if you walk down the street. It's about this big and it's going to be super wide because it's going to go all the way across the street. So that's fine. And all we're going to do is, if you know blueprints well, or even if you don't know them that well, you'll know this. We're going to do an on actor begin overlap. So we're just going to stick this trigger box there. So whenever you walk across this part of the street, sorry, my fault, it will trigger the sequence. So let's go to here and we're going to do, sorry, I just need to make sure that you've highlighted the trigger box so that you can get a reference. You go into your level blueprint, you go to add event, for the trigger box 1, collision, add on actor begin overlap. So that's when your sequence is going to play. So it doesn't have to be instantaneous. I would suggest putting a delay in there, even if it's very, very short. Just because it gives time for things to load in, for your character to get into position, your animation. So by default 0.2, that should be fine. I'm going to just leave it a bit longer. So it's like you don't even know you've walked into that space. It's not so instantaneous. So it gives a bit more of an atmosphere and a moment to it. So I'm going to give it 1 second. And then we're going to take the reference to our master sequence and we're just going to type in play sequence. And you're going to choose the play sequence player. Don't choose play to sequence player, because that can cause problems with other things later. This is the most direct and streamlined way of doing it. But you also don't want this to happen every single time you walk down that street. So what I would suggest is, actually, you can do this before or after the delay, but I would probably do it before the delay. I would just do a do once. And that means that when you walk across that trigger box, it will just happen once. You'll trigger that scene and then that's done, dusted. It'll never play again unless you've reloaded the level. That's not something I'm going to get into. That's too complicated here. But essentially, you will activate the trigger box by walking into it. It will tell it, play this sequence once. It will give you a delay. That delay can be super, super short. I'm just doing 1 second. Then it will play the sequence, and the sequence is here, your master sequence we've got the reference to. So obviously you compile, you save it, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the rain back on for a bit of drama. And you'll notice that once I do this, where are we? Thunderstorm. Okay. And I would suggest getting ultra dynamic weather and ultra dynamic sky. Fantastic product for video games and for films. It just saves you so much time and effort. So we are going to play the game, and we're going to walk across this little trigger here, and then it's going to trigger our sequence, which is up there. And you'll actually see our character down here possibly in the shot, which is great because that's what you want to happen, right? But what I would also do is in our sequence, go to our master sequence here. We have a few options. So in this, we're going to fade out the music and it'll come in as we're playing. But if you just wanted your sequence to just play and have your player paused while the sequence is playing and then regain control of the player, you could use disable movement input. And that would mean that in the background, you won't be running around if you're using your controls. You can also hide the player. So if we don't want the player to be in the shot, then he won't be. I'm going to do that. You can hide the HUD as well. That is something that you would really have to work on with your HUD. That really depends. That's not something that's relevant to what we're doing today. Today I'm just trying to show you how you can do cutscenes. So I would probably hide the player for what we're doing today, but I'm just letting you know that these options are there within your sequence. So before we play it, I realized actually if I hide the player, once I regain control of the player and the music's still playing, my player is going to be disappeared until the music stops. So let's not hide the player for this particular circumstance. And let's just press play, walk into the trigger box and see what happens. Awesome. That's exactly what we wanted to happen. So, of course, you can add more animations, and you can add, no cameras, so that once you see that cutscene of him jumping off, when your player is down here, let's just press play. There you go. When your player is down here, maybe he lands in front of the player and stands up. And you can animate further, but it doesn't have to be with cameras. It can just be a sequence with animations in it, and then your player will see that character arrive in front of him. So that there's a lot of possibilities here. But look, if I go back through here, it's going to play again now because I restarted the game. There you go. See? Obviously, we don't want to do that, but you can see exactly how it works. So the next step, the final step, is if you're doing this as an animation and not an in-game cutscene, and you just want to render out an animation, I'll show you how to do that now. So for you movie makers out there and my buddy George, this is how you're going to render out the visuals for this. Now, I have to say, there is issues with rendering out the audio in Unreal Engine 4 only because it was kind of experimental when UE4 was running. Now in UE5 you use something else called a movie render queue, and that's much better. So you could always do all of this in UE5 and then render it out that way so that you get the sound and the visuals together. Or you can play around with UE4 to get the sound and the visuals. I'll show you how to render out the visuals because I'm not sure on the specifics. I've had varying success with audio and video, but I'll show you how to get the exact visuals that you would like to render out. So let's jump straight into that. You could also do this in UE4 and then upgrade the project to UE5 and then export the render that way. It's a roundabout way of doing it if you prefer to work in 4. So there is ways of doing it. It's just not brilliantly implemented natively. So if we go into our sequence master and make sure our camera cuts are switched on. Yep, we got everything there. And if we go over to this little icon here, which is like a little clapperboard, it says render this movie to video, image, or frame sequence. And this is what you're looking for. So if you want to render it out as a video, which is what I tend to do, you can do it in AVI format, or you've got a few options here. You can do image sequences. PNG is probably what you want to use if you're doing it as an image sequence. And if you're a animator, you're probably no stranger to doing sound separate to video in specific frames, right? But here we got it set to 24 frames, which is exactly what we need. I got it set to 4K, which is 3840 by 2160, and it's in 16 by 9, so it's going to render out the black bars, which is fine because we can edit that. And then you can create the name and where you're going to save it. I've just called it test. And there's a few different options here, which I'm not going to go heavily into. Movie extension .mov, helpful, right? And cinematic mode. So all you have to do is press capture. Now, when it comes to the audio, let's go to audio options. There's literally just a name, and here is the audio output format. And there's either no audio or there's experimental. Now, I'm sure you can get plugins for this, which will help with the audio. And there is another way of doing this with a different type of cue, but I'm not familiar with it. So I'm just going to show you the way that I know. And this was how you would render it out as a video. So you just press capture, and you'll find that when you do this, it will play it back in a separate window. There you go, it's playing it back. Now for me, it's playing the audio as I'm talking. Hopefully it's not too loud that you can't hear me. But I'm not sure if it's capturing that audio, because I've had situations where it has given me a separate audio file. So you can press stop capture now, or you can wait for it to end. So I'm just stopping the capture. It's rendered out a separate audio file for me before and a separate video file. But sometimes it just renders out a video file. So I'm really not sure how the audio is going to work with this. My way around this is I render it out in 4K, and then I screen capture playing it in the viewport, and that gives me all of the audio from the screen capture. But you can also put it into an editor and edit the sound how you like. But that's the best information I can give you at the moment. If anybody figured out how to do the sound really well when exporting, or has any tips from playing around with this tutorial and making improvements, please leave them in the comments below. I am probably not going to be available to answer comments, but I would be really happy to see other people helping each other in the comments. And that's it, guys. That's everything I wanted to show you today. I really appreciate your time. I hope that this has given you some basic skills in filmmaking inside Unreal, both for cutscenes and for making movies. This is not by any means a follow this step-by-step tutorial to teach you how to be a movie maker. This is just a starting point where you can learn the basics and work on it from there. So I really hope that this has been interesting, if not helpful, and I really appreciate your time, and I hope that this has helped you. So you have an awesome day, guys, and thank you for watching.